Dear, whoever's gonna read this when I'm dead. This is the last chapter in this dusty tome. It was my former colleague who scribbled most of this, but I must inform you with utmost regret that the author of this chronicle has been dead for the past year. Hence the lengthy gap between the last two entries. My name is Cedric. I've never read this book, so I have no idea if Varin ever mentioned little old me, or if he had something good to say about me. Probably not. I'm actually quite certain he quietly hated my guts. I would deserve it. I myself loved Varin like my own brother. I hated him too, to say the truth. But he was family. Well, not exactly. He wasn't my brother, he was like my brother. And now I'm rambling. Fuck's sake. Was never much of a scholarly type, but I owe my brother in God and the Order of Vigilance at large some closure, I reckon. So here I am, scribbling the last chapter in this book. Finishing it is the last thing I can do now, since I'm the last member of the Order and all that, and soon I'll be gone as well. But what the hell am I supposed to write about? Well, perhaps a summary of what we were about will suffice. You know, for any intelligent person who looks at this fat bastard of a book and thinks to himself, hell no, I'm not gonna read all that. So, what were we about? To tell the truth, I haven't got a clue. I used to think I do, but not anymore. I can tell you the same thing Grandmaster Garrett told me. I remember how he asked me, "Do you know what we do, lad?" And I answered, the same way any common Aldernian would. "You fight monsters." I remember how he gave me this look, like when a child tells his pa he saw a pig flying. He ran his fingers through those catfish whiskers of his, like he always did when a greenhorn said something stupid. And he said, "Nah, lad, we are gatekeepers. Aldern is a door to another world full of nasty things. Our job is to keep that door shut." I'm a child of a head witch and a cunning man, and as such, I had an inkling what he's talking about, but only later into my tutelage I understood. Aldern is a cursed place. Every stone, every blade of grass whispers to you when you listen closely. It's as if the entire barony sits upon a big volcano that wants to erupt, and like with every place with volcanic activity, it has hot springs, bubbling mud, water sprouts, occasional tremors and ever-present stink of sulfur. Except the sprouts and the hot springs are werewolves, vampires, fae, undead, and worse. Much, much worse. Like the old Grouch over in the old Soktos. He was here long before us, and he will remain here long after us, by the looks of it. We were trying to get rid of him for centuries, but in the end, he had the last laugh. He broke through the barrier around Old Soktos a few years back. We tried to take him down, but we got our balls kicked in, to put it mildly. There were 40 Vigilants before the hunt, and after there were only 3. Me, Varin, and Grandmaster Garrett, who couldn't even piss by himself by that time. He taught us what he knew and passed away, making me and Varin joint Grandmasters on paper. Why wasn't there only one Grandmaster, you might ask? Well, I reckon because me and Varin are like an apple and a pear. We looked similar, but we wasn't. I'm a fighter first and a scholar second, and Varin is the other way around. So old Garrett figured we'd work better together if we shared the title. And he was right. Somewhat. We didn't see always eye to eye, but we got along. Working together to keep the people safe. But keeping the eye on the entire barony is pretty hard work when it's just 2 blokes running about. We had to take in apprentices, and let me tell you, I would rather sleep with a striga than teach snotty brats. Raising new vigilants is hard. Training lasts 5 years, or at least that's what the Codex tells us. Codex Vigilance. A rule set that we hold more dear than the scripture itself. That's where I and Varin butted heads most often. I know rules are important, but I also believe rules ought to be broken when situation calls for it. And this was indeed such a situation. Varin disapproved at first, but in the end we settled on a compromise. We took inspiration from Aldernian guilds and introduced the new rank of Tovarish. Tovarishes are essentially assistant apprentices. Instead of having our new members spending 5 years studying and practicing in mock-up situations, we slashed the training time in half and took the initiates with us into the field. It was dangerous, but nevertheless very effective. Even Varin had to admit that, but I had to admit that the rules were laid out for a reason. Frequent injuries, dangerous situations, and the incident that made me realize I wasn't cut out to be a grandmaster. We gradually took in 4 apprentices. First was Archinold, a cunning man from Erstwald, perhaps the oldest initiate our order had, but when you hit the rock bottom you can't be choosy. Archinold came to us by himself, and he had experience, as all cunning men do. Teaching him was a challenge, not because he was inexperienced. It was the unlearning that made my head hurt. Taking off a curse of a cow is one thing, banishing a demon is another matter. And Archie had his head filled with superstitious nonsense. For every effective counterspell he had 2 that were utter gobbledygook. But he came around eventually, once he understood that turning your clothes inside out does not protect you from elf shot. Archie had a good heart, and he was a good friend. I need to stop thinking about that, or I will open another bottle. A year after, we took in 3 street urchins, siblings Brina and Tobin, and a girl called Velia. And this is where I've learned I made a huge blunder. See, Bryn and Top were Varin's pick, and I didn't want to fall behind. And so I did some recruiting of my own. Velia was a quick learner and a prodigy, fearless, decisive, exactly my kind of person. Alas, I've soon discovered a few things about her and about myself. For example, that I'm a terrible judge of character. Velia was an eager and diligent student, and of all the new students she seemed the only one to like me. When she called me master, it wasn't out of fear, but out of respect. Or that's what she wanted me to believe. She knew exactly what to do and what to say to please me, so I didn't suspect anything was afoot when she frequently snuck away. Our fort is no cloister. If your duties and equipment are in order, there's no reason why you shouldn't hit the town and have some fun. But stealing weapons and teaching our secrets to a street gang you run on the side? It's hard to believe even now, but that's what she's been doing right under our noses for 2 years at least. It was only when the murders on the north side started when I connected the dots. Alchemical burns, curses, gunshot wounds, and a rapid rise of a certain youth gang that used to be only a nuisance. A band of pickpockets and thieves were suddenly feared by such stone-cold killers like the Butcher's gang. By the by, it was the same gang I pulled Velia out of. Turns out she never quite cut the ties with them. And the Codex is clear on what to do in the circumstances such as these. In case a Vigilant goes and misuses our ways, there would be a trial and a punishment. Except there wasn't enough of us to call a council. Fortunately, or rather unfortunately, Codex is clear on that too. And what Codex says was pretty grim. There would be no rule bending this time. I and Varin had a sit down and we talked long into the night. We tried thinking about alternatives, tried finding some wiggle room in Codex's interpretation, but alas, there was none. Not in this case. Of course, we could have just ignored the issue. Perhaps we should have. But then again, ignoring the rules is what got us into the situation in the first place. After he emptied half a bottle of spirits, I stood up and I said, I will do it. Not because I was so enthusiastic about it, but because it was my fuck-up. I talked Varin into bending the rules, and I picked up Velia. It was my responsibility to eat this slop. The next time Velia was out in the town, I put on my duster, the hat, all the equipment and gear, but it wasn't the hobgoblins I would be chasing this time. Finding the gang's hideout wasn't difficult. Other gangs feared them. Watch wouldn't dare to enter their territory. For the fear of hexes, their turf laid on the riverside, in a place locals call the gutter. They based their operations in a courtyard of an abandoned villa, and by the looks of it, they operated there for some time, turning the old house into a mockery of a palace, thinking themselves to be untouchable royalty or something like that. They welcomed me with open arms, kids no older than 17 years old. Youngest might have been 12. All of them were grinning. All of them were decked out in fine, oversized rags, clinking with jewelry, a testament to the power our methods granted them. Velia was seated in the middle of the courtyard, on a large, dusty armchair, like some sort of queen, wearing the vestments of our order, the coat, the tricorn, high boots, and a red cravat. When she saw me, she tossed her blonde ponytail over her shoulder, and a grin appeared on her freckled face. I remember how I asked her, Velia, what are you doing? And she said, I am putting your lessons to good use, master. By killing people? By killing monsters. Isn't that what we are supposed to be doing? I realized we were both lost when she said that. All notions of turning this around evaporated in an instant. Who are we to decide who is and who isn't a monster? And so I said the words that I hope to never speak again. Velia Ishminster, by the power vested in me by Codex Vigilance, I find you guilty of following crimes: theft, extortion, torture, and murder. In the name of Devanura Almighty, I hereby sentence you to death. Her smile faded, and got replaced by what I can only describe as confusion and shock. Master? She said. I shot her in the head. The rest of the gang scattered, like a flock of sparrows. Haven't heard of them since. They were afraid we'd come for them next. I must sound like I'm mighty proud of myself, but I'm not. In fact, I felt and still feel terrible. Fighting horrors of the night is one thing, but looking a person who trusts you straight in the eye and then blasting their brains out. Velia didn't become a ghost, but she might as well have, because the visions of the day will haunt me until I am buried 6 feet under. You know, while the others didn't like me much before, now they were fucking terrified of me. The looks they would give me said it all. What if I'm next? I would never hurt them, but they didn't know that. The trust has been broken. I should have stepped down. I really should have prevented what happened next. The biggest fuck-up of my life. It happened a year ago on winter solstice. I have a cousin who lives only a few miles away from Aldern city. He's married into a wealthy farmer family, and every winter he throws these huge feasts for the entire village and anyone who's invited. It's been only 2 months since the incident with Velia, and I felt like having a party might help me get back in good graces with the students. And it did. You know, old Master Garrett used to say, there's only one demon I cannot exorcise: alcohol. The broom that sweeps through humanity like through dust. But the fact is, booze is a great conversation starter. All the barriers and the reservations go out the window after you do a few pints of beer. A few more than that and the knives may start talking instead, but let's not go there. The atmosphere was pleasant. Food and drink was good, and musicians played a happy jig. We Vigilants ain't too rowdy. We prefer talking to dance, and that's what we did. And while others had fun, we had a proper heart-to-heart. We didn't turn into pals all of a sudden, but throughout the long evening I got a chance to explain why I did what I did. And while they still did not agree with it, I think they understood me, stopped seeing me as a monster who might take them if they misbehave. I explained to them that to deserve a cold-blooded execution they must do something truly horrendous, and that I can't just go around and shoot people in the head willy-nilly. Codex grants emergency powers in clearly defined and concrete situations, and abusing them can lead you to much harsher penalty than mere shooting in the head. There are plenty of worse fates in Aldern than death, believe me. We ended up having a pretty good time after that. Varian had plenty of trivia floating around his head. I told stories from my younger years when I was an apprentice. Archie amused us with dirty jokes well into the small hours, and Brina and Top talked us into dancing. When the third hour after midnight rolled about, we were well and truly plastered. When Varin fell off the table, that was when we agreed that we should go home and get some sleep. We could have stayed the night, but Aldern was just 2 miles away. Moon shone brightly on the way through the fields, and you don't think straight when you are drunk. We are armed, there is 5 of us, and we are vigilants. Most Aldernians know better than to come out while the sun is still down, but for us vigilants, night is our second home. There's a reason why there's a lantern in our crest. Hell, it's in our name. We hold vigil at night so people of Aldern can sleep easy. Getting home should have been easy too. Just a short walk through snow-covered fields. What's the worst thing that could have happened? We were about halfway between Ellsborough and Aldern when I saw movement ahead of us. Something was rapidly approaching down the road. Though the full moon was shining that day, it was still night, and I drank my share. I first thought it a rider galloping towards us, but then it got closer. It had no rider on its back, and what sounded like hoofs at first were claws clacking on the frozen road. Varin was the first one to gather his senses. Werewolf! And it was a big one. Nothing gets you sobered up quite like a werewolf the size of a pony coming straight at you. I don't remember much of what happened next. It's what happens when fear kicks in and you act purely on instinct. I remember I shot it. Bastard squealed, turned around and ran. I didn't think straight. Werewolves don't run. Ever. I told Varin to stay back with the others and gave chase. Another stupid mistake. No human alive can catch up to a werewolf unless you are riding on a racehorse, or unless it lets you. Unfortunately, for me it was the latter. He stopped and turned around to face me. Now, fighting a werewolf is no joke, especially the big ones. But I was drunk and pissed. That motherfucker wanted to kill my friends, and I was like a mama bear come to protect her cubs. I also had a shotgun. Werewolves are tough bastards who eat lead for breakfast. Silver is marginally better, but nothing compares to witchfire. Witchfire is nasty stuff. Damnably hard to make, but it burns anything even remotely laced with arcana. Werewolves, witches, frigging ghosts. If it has magic in its blood, it burns like a kindling. Green inferno illuminates the night. Wave of heat washes over your face, and then comes the horrible smell. Not to mention the screaming, wailing and trashing of whatever you just did. It's an ugly death. I can only say with certainty that he definitely did not expect that, telling by the surprised yelp and the horrified expression. But the last surprise of the evening was yet to come, and the werewolf would have the last laugh in the end. It took me about a second before I recognized gunshots and screams coming from the way back. I ran. I ran as fast as I could. First the gunshots died down, then the screams stopped. I was too slow, too stupid, and too late. Pools of blood, torn limbs, guts, large wolf tracks in the snow. Dozen, at least. I don't know. I can't remember. Don't want to. I stumbled back to Aldern in a daze. Watchmen saw me coming, let me spend the night and the morning in the gatehouse, sitting on a chair wrapped in a blanket, drinking tea and shivering the whole time. Not because I was cold, but because of the shock. I've seen some shit back in the day. A half-rotten vampire raping a boy while he drank from the open vein on his neck like some bloated tick. I haven't felt like this, not even when the entire order went tits up. No, neither of these things hit so close to home. And none of these were my fault. This was. And just like that, the order of vigilance was gone. Again, I returned to the site of the incident the next day to recover the bodies. People killed by werewolves can turn post-mortem and become precoliches. That's how potent the curse is. The beast can take you even when you are dead. The protocol was clear. I had to go back to the site and burn the corpses, even though there was hardly anything left to burn. All my colleagues had been torn to bits like old rags. The only exception was Varin. We found the place where the werewolves devoured him. When a werewolf gets you, it eats the whole of you, bones and clothes included. The only thing we found was Varin's left hand, forgotten in the bushes. We carted off the bodies, burned them in the purifying pits, and then buried them. And things went down south from there. Cases started piling up. I kept leaving my duties for later. You know how that lie goes. I'll do it tomorrow. I was feeling sorry for not being able to help people. And then I just stopped caring. Developed a drinking habit over a few months. You know what happens to a dog if his owner beats it so often it's unconscious half of the time? It stops caring. It just lays there and accepts whatever's coming. No yelping, no crying, no fighting back. Cause what's the point? My life was like that. I got better, a little bit. Got to solving conflicts with the nightfolk again, to keep myself occupied. Of course I kept boozing, but I got it under control, somewhat. I haven't taken in any new apprentices. I don't even consider myself vigilant anymore, to tell you the truth. But I kept on going, up until now. The anniversary of the cock-up. I woke up feeling real shitty today, and so I opened a bottle, and then another, and another. Ended up soaked like a sponge, yelling at the statues on a cemetery at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's when Conrad found me. I suppose it's time I told you about him. Now again, I have no idea to what extent Varin wrote about him in this chronicle, but I suppose it was plenty. Aldern is full of strange things, monsters, secrets, things time has forgotten. But if you bother to look hard enough, the web always leads back to the spider. Now I must say we are quite lucky this spider is on our side, because if he wasn't, well, let's just say things would turn bad, real bad. Now I will try to spare you the esoteric mumbo-jumbo, but I'm afraid there is no way I can explain this to you without telling you a little story. The legend goes that a long time ago, there lived a man who could heal any sickness, any disease you can think of. A fever, a plague. Nothing was beyond this man, except for one thing. Well, I suppose it's true, since no one found a cure for stupidity yet. But that's not what this story is all about. His healer, who has found a cure for every disease known to man, set his sights on curing that one thing which will get us all eventually. Death. And you know what? He actually did it. He discovered true immortality. Not the one that dragons and fae have, nor the kind that undead have. Fae, dragons, demons and angels, although enduring, are not endless and need to go through periodic rebirths. And undeath is fate I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. True immortality is much more complex. It looks at entropy and spits in its face. Nothing short of a god has such power. And therein lies the problem. Now, what sort of god would bend over and backwards to wrestle the cosmos itself for a mortal? Such a god would need to be completely and utterly mad. I don't know what transpired between the healer and the mad one. What I know is that he made the healer into a messiah, divinity incarnate in mortal flesh. And I also know that the healer started having second thoughts once he peered into the mind of the being that now inhabited his flesh. Thing is, gods don't take kindly to being denied. The entity was no longer the sole wielder of its power. The healer became an inseparable part of it, unstoppable force met immovable object. They are now locked in an endless tug of war, right here in Aldern. I know, because I met both of them, because I was part of the order that mitigates the side effects of this eternal conflict. How does Conrad the Plague Doctor fit into all this? Well, I believe you have connected the dots yourself. Aldern is a gate, and Conrad is the key that stubbornly refuses to turn. Perhaps I should take inspiration from the man who has been a living prison for a god for the last 6,000 years. But then again, I have a strong suspicion that Conrad the Crow is no longer a man. It would explain why he doesn't disrobe from that Plague Doctor attire, ever. I've never seen his face. On a second thought, that's probably a good thing. Grandmaster Garrett told us about a Vigilant who glimpsed what's beneath the mask. The Vigilant in question went mad and scooped out his own eyes with a spoon. Maybe it's a tall tale my master made up. But you know what? I believe it. Considering the shit his mere presence causes, the effect it has on this land as a whole, thinning the veil between materium and immaterium, spreading of metaphysical corruption, sicknesses, and the magical beings, of course. It's been like this for much longer than anyone can remember. People got used to it. Folks have adapted to the land, and the land has adapted to the people. There's an entire culture woven around this. Any outsider would consider us bizarre, strange, mad even. There's a whole host of folk rituals and customs. For anyone outside Aldern, they probably seem as superstition. But for locals, these superstitions and beliefs are the difference between life and death. The most striking difference is perhaps that Aldernian day has 26 hours. There's a very good reason for this. The 13th hour is when the spirit inhabiting our good doctor has a free reign all over Aldern. And well, I told you there are worse fates than death. While the 13th hour rolls around, you better bolt your doors and pray. It sounds terrible, doesn't it? But for the people of Aldern, it's just the everyday reality of things. Because what else is there to do? For Aldernians, living another day and dying with their soul intact, that is a victory. In my case though, things might be more complicated. Vigilants were the reason why the people could sleep soundly, but with us gone, things are starting to crumble, and I haven't been able to put them back again. I'm alone. Conrad did show up eventually, with a helping hand. Do you know why they call him the Crow? He's always wearing a mask with a beak, and he has a pet raven. That might have something to do with that, but no. We call him the Crow because he turns up only when there's something bad coming your way. Unfortunate thing is, he is there to help. He has an aptitude for feeling when evil forces gather, being so tightly bound to them and all that. He always shows up to mitigate the damage, if not prevent it outright. Things are bad with his help, catastrophic without it. But people are people. They don't see the good, only the bad. Many come to interpret Conrad's presence as a bad omen, if not outright the cause of their suffering. Fools. He's neither, and yet I dread what is to come, if he has decided to pay me a visit, now of all times. He gave me 2 incredibly powerful artifacts. And the words, "Don't die." He could have been more concrete about the odds I'm facing, but then again, he would have told me if he knew. Or he had a good reason not to tell me. Who knows what goes through the head of a man who is 6,000 years old? Apparently it's a lot. Since when does one hand out swords forged by angels and blood of mad gods like candy? Unless Conrad finally turned mad himself. But if that were the case, this world would be ending by now. Contemplating this is perhaps futile. I am a field operator. Always have been. I can tell you that the Vodniks hate ropes made from tree bark, but I can't tell you why. Because I don't know. Varin would have known. But I can tell you what these things do. Wolfsbane, the sword, had been forged by an archangel Ephrael, and given to St. Lucius in times of wolf blight, or so the legend goes. Imagine you are a werewolf and someone's made a weapon meant just for you. It remains to be seen what this sword can do. I have my theories, and I'm gonna find out soon enough, but I've done some digging in our library. And the Lord said unto Lucius, Take this steel bestowed upon me by heaven, go forth and slay the unclean beasts of the earth. And so Lucius went forth, poured the just broth into the steel, and the steel burned the fiends and the beasts and banished their immortal souls into living hells. Something like this sure does come in handy fighting an entire werewolf pack, but the usage of holy artifacts always draws the divine eye to you, and that's not always a good thing. I'm more concerned about the blood. Well, it's more of a black bile actually. Sticky and nasty. It smells like a decaying corpse, but it's 10 times worse. And don't get me started on what happens if that shit gets on your hands. And that's talking about the diluted form found in werewolves, vampires and other creatures afflicted by the blight, who spread the corruption like a sickness. Once the bile gets into your system, there's a chance it will turn you into whatever abomination it came from. That's the regular corruption. But we are talking about the blood of Zeta. This crap comes directly from Conrad himself. It hasn't been diluted through the ages by passing from one monster to another. This makes Conrad the great-granddaddy of all the lycanthropes, Nosferatus, Trigois, etc. etc. It is to do with a banned practice we Vigilants had in the murky past. We would inject ourselves with the corrupted blood procured from our prey. I've read about Vigilants who could go berserk and go toe-to-toe with horrors of the night after injecting werewolf blood, or about those who could use sanguimancy and necromancy after consuming the blood of a vampire. Imagine what can happen when you inject yourself with blood of Zayton himself. Immortality, cosmic revelations, power over life and death, and entropy itself. One can only imagine. And what about the price? Vigilance had methods that mitigated the damage. A timed device that injected neutralizing solutions, bloodletting, purification rituals. Sometimes they worked, but most of the time, well, let's just say there's a good reason why the practice was abandoned, alongside many other tools and weapons that our order considered too barbaric, too inhumane towards us and towards the Nightfolk. I'm gonna tell you something. I don't care anymore. What was done to Varin, Bryn and Archie and Top, that was inhumane. You tell me these werewolves are still human beings and I'll show you half-eaten corpses. Some werewolves seek seclusion. They join communities that help them live with their affliction and face death when the beast can no longer be contained. Creatures like rats and cockroaches are still a part of natural order, but this pack is nothing more than a festering wound. And sometimes you need to cut off the leg to save the body. I do admit, I grew hopeless, tired, lazy. But you know what? I never stopped hunting for them, listening, snooping, sniffing. A homicidal werewolf pack doesn't just disappear off the face of the earth. They laid low, but sooner or later, they had to come out, and I was waiting for them. See, Varin would disagree. Let it go, he would say. We are peacekeepers. It wasn't your fault. Get up, stand tall, and move on. There's no point in the revenge. Let Gordy and his hounds take care of it. There's nothing else we can do here. Find new apprentices and try again. That's what Master Garrett would have wanted. I respect Gordy. I do. He is a werewolf himself. He takes in those afflicted with lycanthropy and allows them to live like human beings again in his sitch. But when it comes to hunting his own kind, I don't believe he is up for the task. And I haven't gotten as much as a message from him. I could have just let it go, for one was the guarantee that the same werewolves wouldn't do it again. I'm sure they didn't get me only because I've been so careful the entire year. And then there's the other matter, an information I've been withholding from you, my dear, who is going to read this when I'm dead. See, I caught one of these fuckers a few days back. It was by pure chance. Since I'm now alone, I've been relying on deterrents, traps, and the like. A farmer at the very edge of Aldern's fields complained that something is killing his cows and sheep. I thought nothing of it at first, just a wolf or a bear, but I laid some consecrated bear traps. And what do you know? The farmer found a naked woman caught in the snare. People know better than to help a little girl who calls for help in the middle of the night. And so they called me instead. Call me a monster if you must, but I know a werewolf when I see one. And so I made sure she couldn't run or hurt anyone else. When I got to her, I kneecapped her with a gunshot. The moment the silver bullet bit into the flesh, it sizzled like a meat on a pan. Perhaps you don't like me now. Who would cripple another living creature like that? I tell you who. Someone who knows what a cornered werewolf can do. Busted kneecap means that the monster can't run. And when it can't run, it can't get you, if you keep your distance. And so, that's what I did. The innocent-looking woman started roaring and howling in a manner no human being can, and instead of rolling on the ground in pain, she flashed canine teeth and hurled curses my way once she recognized me. It took about 7 tranquilizer darts before she went down. That much could kill a horse, but for a wolf, it meant a few hours of uneasy sleep at worst. Men who were helping me get her to the Vigilant keep looked over their shoulders constantly if the beast is about to wake up, and the horses that pulled the cart were constantly on edge. Now the beast is in the cellar of this very building, bound by silver chains in an iron cage. She went into self-induced hibernation right after she came to giving me the silent treatment this one. Not for long. Nothing wakes a werewolf like a scent of fresh blood. And once she's awake, let's see how werewolves like the touch of heavenly steel.